Since 1967, the NFL has adopted the Super Bowl, the championship game in which only one team comes away with the famous Vince Lombardi trophy. Over the years, we have seen many miracle teams. We've seen many dynasties and great franchises that have won the big game. We've seen amazing teams over the years. And now it is time once more to look over the next Super Bowl. We have two teams that are seeking the glorious crown. First off, one side, we have the Kansas City Chiefs that are looking to join an exclusive club that's been held by the Cowboys, the 49ers, the Steelers, and the Patriots for a couple of years and more than many decades. They are looking to three-peat and potentially do something no NFL team or franchise has ever done in the Super Bowl era, and that is the Kansas City Chiefs. And then on the other end, we have a team that is looking to catch up, one of the more popular teams in the NFL, looking to make another mark and add to that trophy, while also trying to halt history as they have done many times or have been a part of and have failed to do many times. And of course, we're talking about the Philadelphia Eagles. This is a game that is going to be watched across the world, whether you're a fan of both teams or you just do not care, because there's a lot of storylines going into this game. So of course, today, in the final episode of Season 2, we are going to be looking over the Super Bowl between Kansas City and Philadelphia. This is the Game Day Hour, and I hope you guys are excited for this episode, as I am, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. Let's get started. The first place I want to start is the history of both franchises in the Super Bowl. The Chiefs have been to 6 Super Bowls, this will be their 7th. The Eagles have been to 4, this will be their 5th. The Chiefs lost the first ever Super Bowl to the Green Bay Packers 35-10, and that was the beginning of the Super Bowl era. But 3 years later, they would win their first Super Bowl, being the third franchise to win the trophy other than Green Bay and the New York Jets at the time. And then 11 years later, Philadelphia would make their first Super Bowl, in which they got trounced by Madden and the Oakland Raiders. And then it took many years, but 24 years later, the Eagles made it back to the Super Bowl under Andy Reid, Donovan McNabb, but they were in the collateral of the first dynasty of the 21st century, in which they lost to Tom Brady, and the Patriots became a dynasty to start off the century. But then 13 years later, they would finally get their revenge on what was a miracle team at the time led by Nick Foles, and they defeated Tom Brady, halting the progress of yet another dynasty of Tom Brady in New England. If they lost, they would have been the collateral of 2 dynasties, which would have sucked. But then 2 years later, Patrick Mahomes gets to the big stage. Because the same year the Eagles won the Super Bowl is when Patrick Mahomes came into the NFL. And in Super Bowl 54, the Chiefs beat the 49ers in a comeback victory, and then the next year would lose to Tom Brady. Tom Brady would get his 7th ring, and Patrick Mahomes would be 1-1 in the Super Bowl. And then a year goes by, and then the season after, both of these teams collide in Super Bowl 57, in which Jalen Hurts outperformed Patrick Mahomes. But like the 49ers, they blew a lead, and the Chiefs ended up winning the Super Bowl 38-35. And then the year after, the Chiefs would get their first dynasty ever, beating the 49ers in Vegas in overtime. And now both teams meet once again. The Chiefs are 4-2 historically in the Super Bowl era. And I forgot to mention that it was 50 years in between their victory in Super Bowl 4 and their victory in Super Bowl 54. So it's been a long time for Chiefs fans, but now they have gotten to enjoy this long stint of success that many franchises have never seen before, except for the upper echelons of the Cowboys, the Steelers, the Niners, and the Patriots. And for Philadelphia, they are 1-3 all time. Oftentimes, they're standing in the way of a dynasty and either succumbing to it like they did to New England in the early bits of the 21st century, or stopping it. But they were also at the start of the Chiefs dynasty, and they have a very big opportunity to become collateral to the first ever three-peat in the history of any Super Bowl. Nobody has ever done this before. The Chiefs could be the first one to do it, and the Eagles are the last thing standing in their way. But before we get to the game itself, we're going to take a look at both teams and their road to the Super Bowl. The Chiefs, of course, They won the Super Bowl last year, so they start their year off against the Baltimore Ravens in a thriller, and it just came down to a toe being out of bounds, and they went off to be 1-0. Then throughout the year, they were undefeated for the most part, but they were winning close games, and at times you saw controversy, obviously with the referees. You see a lot of roughing the passer calls that went in Mahomes' favor, a lot of pass interference and holding calls, just so many penalties that were backbreakers to teams, and many people, including myself, have looked at those penalties and said, man, the Chiefs, they're getting lucky, because a lot of times you wouldn't call this, but because it's Mahomes, obviously you're going to make those calls. They even had lucky wins like blocking the field goal against Denver to go 9-0. And then they go to Buffalo and they suffer their first loss, but again, it was within 10 points. They lost by only 9. They would go on to win the rest of their games, except for the last game in which they sat out all their starters and lost to Denver Broncos, who made it into the playoffs. Of course, Kansas City gets a bye because they're the number 1 seed. They beat Houston. Again, a lot of controversy, especially that collision of 2 Texans players that resulted in a late hit, despite the fact that Mahomes did not get hit. And the Chiefs would go on to win 23-14. I think a lot of people suspected that, but were disappointed in officiating. And then once more, they play the Buffalo Bills. It's the 4th time Patrick Mahomes has faced Josh Allen. And in doing so, Mahomes defeats Allen again, but again, it comes with controversy, like a phantom face mask, or not getting it on 4th down when Allen was basically, he had the ball over the line. A lot of people said it could be behind. That one was really hard to tell, but it was really close, and of course the Chiefs get that one. You can make the excuse, you can make the argument that the Chiefs won fair and square. The Bills, they could have won. Obviously, they didn't. That drop is going to haunt them, and you're correct. But of course, officiating was a high topic, and it wasn't ignored. Now the Chiefs are back in the Super Bowl, and a lot of people view them as the villains, and I don't blame them. The Chiefs got there, and this was not their most impressive season. This is not Mahomes' best year ever. As a matter of fact, it wasn't even Kelsey's best year ever. The defense did not play to the best of their ability, and yet here they are once more. What are the Chiefs playing for? Well, the Chiefs are playing to join the Dallas Cowboys and the 49ers with 5 Super Bowls, and of course they're chasing New England and Pittsburgh, maybe even looking to jump them and get to 7. That's what the Chiefs are aiming for right now, but historically they're aiming for the first ever three-peat in Super Bowl history. Now keep in mind, there have been dynasties in almost every single decade. In the 70s, it was the Steelers with 4. In the 80s, it was the Niners with 4. In the 90s, it was the Cowboys with 3. In the 2000s and 2010s, it was New England. And now Kansas City, they have their own dynasty, but nobody's ever three-peated. With that said, obviously, there is a lot of people who are banking on history being made. They just want it to happen in the best way possible. Obviously, they don't want the referees to be involved. And even when the Chiefs played the Eagles the last time in the Super Bowl, a lot of people were upset at that late holding call on Philadelphia. Now, personally, I think it was the right call, but I have to admit, it was so close that you can see why other people were frustrated by it. And of course, it happened in the last few seconds. I hope that the game is officiated properly. If the Chiefs win, but so many people are like, well, there wasn't a call here, they got this call when they shouldn't have, well, then this three-peat is not going to be remembered historically in a positive light. It will be remembered in a very negative light. So I want officiating to basically have their hands off and don't favor one team or another, because I do believe with the amount of times the Chiefs have gotten lucky that there is something going on with the NFL, and I would like there to be an investigation. I hope it's nothing, but that is my suspicion. And then on the other side, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. Now remember, the Eagles made it to the Super Bowl 2 years ago, lost to Kansas City. The year after, they started off 11-1 or 10-1, one of the two, and then they just sputtered out of control. It started with the loss to the Niners, and then it was awful. Gets bounced out of the playoffs, first round at Tampa Bay. But then in the offseason, like more of their off seasons, they strike gold. In a trade acquisition, in a free agency signing, they get Saquon Barkley to be their running back to go with an offense that has Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, and Devonta Smith, and Dallas Goedert. And then defensively in the draft, they get Cooper DeJean, they get Quinion Mitchell to go along with Jalen Carter up front. This defense is young and it's powerful, so Howie Roseman, again, is a wizard. He just keeps building and building and putting his teams in the best position. I wish my Cowboys could do the same. As the Eagles season started, they went 2-2. Barkley was playing good, but Jalen Hurts was not. And a lot of people were wondering if Coach Sirianni was going to get fired. Now, I had Coach Sirianni as my coach of the year. Obviously, I don't feel that anymore, but I do have to admit, ever since that 2-2 start, they have been absolutely monstrous, winning the next, 12 of their next 13 games, and then through the playoffs, kind of close games until, of course, the last one. They beat the Packers very convincingly. Close one against the Rams. They stopped them late. It was a very clutch victory, and then absolutely dismantling Washington's young yet striving offense. So when you look at the Eagles, the first thing you think of is Saquon Barkley. In his first year with the Eagles, because the Giants did not use Barkley well, it was actually pretty embarrassing how the New York Giants used Barkley. He was basically their entire offense, and yet they tricked themselves in believing that Daniel Jones was the answer, and it just fell apart. Now Daniel Jones is not even on the team anymore. Barkley in his first year with the Eagles rushed for over 2,000 yards. He was amazing, had highlights that were very alien-esque. Extraterrestrial highlights, like a backwards hurdle. How do you do that? Barkley was amazing. Jalen Hurts, though, he keeps looking like he's taking a step back, but he is winning these games, and I have to give him credit for it. Really, Barkley has fixed a lot of the problems, and it's not like Jalen Hurts has been terrible. He just hasn't been the same Jalen Hurts we saw in the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Obviously, that's subject to change. He could have himself an unbelievable game, but that remains to be seen. A.J. Brown, okay season. Devonta Smith is an okay season, but again, that's because of Jalen Hurts. It's the defense that has been very impressive as well. I mean, these young corners, Mitchell, DeJean, they have really stepped up. That secondary is amazing. Jalen Carter up front, he is a beast, and he's going to be a top 10 defensive player going into next year without a doubt. Philadelphia, here's what they're playing for. You have to understand this by the history. Now, you can make the argument that the Eagles were in the midst of the Raiders' very widespread dynasty under John Madden. And if you want to make that argument, obviously the Raiders not considered a dynasty, and you don't have to, but John Madden did get that team a lot of success back in the day, and the Eagles were in the path of that. But keep in mind, the Eagles' second Super Bowl, when they lost to New England, that was New England's third win in 4 years. First dynasty of the 21st century. When they played in Super Bowl 52, had they lost to New England, it would have been the same story. The third time the Patriots won, creating a dynasty in 4 years. They won that game, and it had to wait till the next season when they beat the Rams in the Super Bowl and became a dynasty, the only franchise in history to have two different eras of dynasty control, which gave them 6 Super Bowls. And if you are the Chiefs, and then the Eagles in Super Bowl 57, while it was not on the back end of a dynasty, it was midway through one in which they lost after giving up a 10-point lead at halftime. And now the Eagles once again see themselves on the back end and potentially the wrong side of history. If they can't beat the Chiefs complete the first three-peat in history. But the Eagles have the opportunity to stop history right here and there, and I bet you most of America is going for that right now. So that's what the Eagles are playing for. And then obviously if you're Philadelphia, you know, you're a team that has been to the big game multiple times. You're 1-3. You're in a division in which Washington has not been to the Super Bowl since the 90s and still has more Super Bowls than you with 3. The Giants, you know, they're a very trash franchise right now, but they ultimately have 4 Super Bowls. And then the most clowned upon team, the Dallas Cowboys, despite not being to the Super Bowl since 1996, have 5. And you, Philadelphia, who's been dominant through the 21st century, still have 1. You have a lot of work to do and a lot of catching up, especially if you want to trash talk all these big franchises like the Cowboys, like the Chiefs, like the Niners. You got to catch up to them. And you've had a level of dominance. I mean, back in the early 2000s, you went to 4 straight NFC championships, 1 Super Bowl appearance to account for all of that, and you didn't even win it. So if the Eagles need this one bad, if they want to get on this role of potentially trying to catch up with some of their rivals or some of these big teams in the league, because in theory, you can argue they should have more. But it has not worked that way in history, but they can change it now. And this is the moment Jalen Hurts needs, because if Hurts cannot beat Mahomes, you're going to be in the same conversation with Lamar Jackson, with the Josh Allen, the great quarterbacks that could not get past Mahomes. And he can do something that only Joe Burrow and Tom Brady have been able to do, and that is stop Patrick Mahomes. He has a big opportunity, but it's going to be really, really difficult to do that. And with that said, it's time to analyze Super Bowl 59. Super Bowl 59 is being played in New Orleans this year, February 9th, and it's going to be between the 4-time champion Kansas City Chiefs and the 1-time champion Philadelphia Eagles. These teams historically are, well, you can make an argument beloved, even the Chiefs right now. Before this whole Patrick Mahomes dynasty was building, you have a lot of loyal fans in Kansas City, some of the most rowdiest fans ever. And then you want to talk about a rowdy and if you want to talk about a rowdy fan base, Philadelphia is probably the best example of one. They are the most loving and the most hating fans you can have. You're playing great, they're hooting and hollering, going crazy in the streets. You're playing bad, they'll let you know. So these franchises have such a loyal and respected fan base amongst the league. And they're facing off again for the second time in history, second time in the last 3 years. And right now, one's playing for history, the other is looking to stop that history. What needs to happen? Well, I'm going to start from the Eagles' perspective because I think it's fair to know that they are the challengers. Obviously, the Chiefs are the ones you need to knock off. So what's different from the Super Bowl 2 years ago versus now? Well, two things. One, their defense is younger, a lot more explosive, and that Super Bowl defense 2 years ago was incredible, but gave up 24 in the second half. Now you have a lot of young prospects. Obviously, Fletcher Cox is gone on the defensive side, but you made up for it by getting Jalen Carter, and then your secondary, you bolstered it up so good. It's one of the best secondaries in the league. So your defense, it really needs to clamp down on Mahomes. You need to not allow the running game to get started. Someone needs to spy on Travis Kelce because Kelce looks like he's open on almost every single play. Now, that's like the classical, everybody says that about the Chiefs. You need to keep an eye on Travis Kelce, and you got to disrupt Mahomes. But even if you get a big lead, something's telling me that a big lead means nothing. It means absolutely nothing because Super Bowl 54, Mahomes comes back from a 10-point deficit. Super Bowl 57 comes back from a 10-point deficit. Super Bowl 58, 10-point deficit. My thing, if you're Philadelphia, if you're not up by 2 touchdowns by the time the fourth quarter comes in, you're in trouble. I don't think you can get into a dogfight with Kansas City and win. You're going to have to actually blow them out. You need to run the score. Once you have your foot on the gas, you can't let it go. Even if you're up by like 14 at halftime or 10 at halftime, I want you to act like you're down by 10 or 14 at halftime and just keep trying to slaughter them on offense. And you have the pieces to do it. Saquon Barkley keeps drives alive and he has so many explosive plays. He can most definitely push this game and spread it wide open. There's no way you don't use him right here. Now, to your credit, obviously, you had Miles Sanders, and while he was a good running back 2 years ago, obviously he wasn't going to sustain that dominance at all. But Saquon Barkley can. And so he is going to be the key to this game. Jalen Hurts, he cannot turn the ball over. You turn the ball over against the Chiefs, you're just asking for it. And so Barkley needs to be explosive, and Jalen Hurts, he needs to make decisive, great plays, maybe keep big drives alive. You want to have a long drive like Notre Dame had in the first 10 minutes of a game? Go for it. Wear them out, keep Mahomes off the bench, burn as much time, but at times you gotta punch them in the mouth. You have to get high up, and again, 14 points or more by the third quarter, or I have no faith. But that said, here's my Chiefs take. The Chiefs defense needs to step up. The biggest threat's going to be Saquon Barkley, and if you have to force Jalen Hurts to throw the ball and beat you there, I think you're in a really good position. Obviously, it doesn't matter if you're trailing by 10 points. You just don't want to have a big deficit going into the fourth quarter. If you're down by 10 or less, or you're tied by the time the fourth quarter gets going, you're in a really good spot. Because Mahomes is one of these kind of players who doesn't start the game off hot, but he finishes it off strong. And that's what you're banking on. If you're the Chiefs defense, get the Eagles off the field. Don't let Saquon Barkley get going. And if he gets going, you gotta find a way to stop him. He will be the biggest threat no matter what. And if you're Mahomes, obviously, just smart decisions. Don't force turnovers. Protect yourself, because the last time you played against the Eagles, you got hurt. Now, luckily, you came back in the second half and blew them up. But obviously, protect yourself out there. The refs will probably do that for you. And it's sarcastic. Obviously, I don't want to say you better hope the refs are doing the same thing, but it really feels like that. Obviously, I'm not a Chiefs fan. I collect jerseys. That's why I'm wearing a Mahomes jersey. But if you're the Chiefs, the refs are probably going to be on your side for the most part. Just do not fall behind by a lot in the third quarter. And with the fourth quarter coming around, if you're down by 10, you're fine. You'll be in good shape. The Chiefs want a dogfight. The Eagles don't. They want to blow them out. Whoever, it all depends. When the fourth quarter starts, where's the game at then? If the Chiefs are down by 14, I'll give the Eagles a shot. If they're down by 10, I'm giving the Chiefs a shot. It's as simple as that. So what do I think is going to happen? Well, I do believe the Eagles will get off to a lead. I do believe that similarly to all the Chiefs' victories, the Eagles will get off to a steady 7 to 10 point lead by halftime. But by the time the fourth quarter comes around, they're not even going to be down by 10. I think the Chiefs will be down by like somewhere 7 or 3 points. And I believe in that fourth quarter, Mahomes is going to have a game-winning drive, get them downfield. Harrison Butker kicks a field goal, similar to what happened in Super Bowl 57. Here we go again. I believe that the Chiefs will win 27 to 24 and become the first team in NFL history to have a three-peat and to also be, one of the teams, or at least one of the 5 teams in NFL history to have 5 Super Bowls. And of course, Mahomes is chasing Brady. Andy Reid is chasing Belichick. I believe that's what's going to happen. I believe the Chiefs are going to win. And the Eagles, well, it's just going to be as frustrating as the 49ers those 2 times. I just think that despite the fact that Saquon Barkley is a way better running back than what the Eagles had last time, I just think Jalen Hurts took a step back. So to me, it's like the same team is going against Kansas City. And when it's the Super Bowl, that's just, you're asking a lot for the Eagles to do. And I just don't think they're going to do it. And with that said, that will do it for today's episode, and this is the final episode of Season 2 of the podcast. Once the Super Bowl is over, it may take a week or 2, but then I will get on with the third season of the podcast. To kind of take it back to this year, my first season, 1,600 views, that's nice, only 24 subscribers. This year, I'm at like 116 as I looked, and then close to 80,000 views. So what changed? Well, first of all, I implemented Shorts. I stopped doing TikTok. I think that TikTok to me was not helping the channel, but YouTube Shorts was helping it a lot. And, well, I mean, TikTok is in a place of limbo. Obviously, something needs to happen with it so it can stay in the United States. So I wasn't a big fan of TikTok to begin with, but YouTube Shorts, it was very helpful, and I could create a schedule around it, and it would translate to my channel. And that was one of the better successes I had. Obviously, I wanted to try some of the new stuff with the art, got my own recording studio, being able to be more consistent with episodes coming out generally on a Friday. Obviously, there'd be weeks where I didn't record, and I got to do better with consistency, obviously. But looking into the third season, I look to capitalize on this success, maybe even start showing NFL content under fair use laws, something I want to look at, but I want to try to figure out how to do that properly so that I don't get copyrights and stuff. But we'll see. Obviously, I'm going to try to get to a place where that won't be a problem. But I just ask that you guys continue to support this channel, and if you haven't already, please subscribe and get prepared for Season 3. I want to know what you guys think about this. Who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl between Philly and Kansas City? Let me know in the comment section. Obviously, the shorts that you've seen throughout the week, I'm highlighting the history and just kind of putting this game in a Grand Central. Hopefully it's a fair Super Bowl and not one that is littered with referee controversy. But yeah, that will do it for this season. So I thank you guys so much for the journey. And this was a lot better. This is a better year. I've had more fun doing this. And I will see you in the next season. I'll talk a little bit more about what we're going to do in Season 3. But anyways, if you haven't followed me on all my social media, I've added a 4th one, which I'll talk about when the next season comes along. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. Have a great day. Take care. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.